Hello and welcome to Intro to Programming. So the purpose of this video is just to show you some sort of advanced features that you may or may not want to add to your website. All right, so none of these are required. None of them are anything you have to do. Some of them is stuff you probably shouldn't do. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. But I present them to you so that you can kind of make that decision for yourself. So you should have a folder called Advanced. And inside of that, there's an HTML document called Demo. And if we run Demo, all right, you're going to see the website that has been created. All right, so up at the top, it says greatest website ever. And you notice that as I drag down, that's a title bar that stays in place. So that's something that kids sometimes like doing is they like to have a title bar where they have the links to their different pages up top. And this, I'm going to kind of talk about how you can do that. Notice this font here, all right? This clearly isn't like a traditional Times Roman or Arial or something like that. So if you want to use unique fonts for your website, I'm going to show you how to do that. You may or may not have noticed, but my mouse has turned into a tiny cat head. So I'll show you how to do that if that's something you want to do. And again, that's kind of what I was talking about when I said I'm not sure you should do some of these things. There's no real good reason to turn your mouse into a cat head, but it's possible. Now this says, "Behold the amazing shrinking cat." So don't act like you're not impressed. You're clearly impressed. So I'll show you how that is all set up. We've got a picture that's like moving around the screen and it's going back and forth. Again, not sure it's really that useful, but if you want to have something like that on your site, I can show you how this works. We've got Slanty Cat here. So this is kind of changing the perspective of the picture so that it looks like it's at an angle. So I can show you how to do that. And then last but not least, we have this amazing spinning cat. So again, not sure you really have any need for a spinning cat, but it's there. It's something that is possible to do. So I'm going to demo how all of this stuff works. All right, so that's kind of the plan for this video. Let me just pause it for a second. All right, welcome back. I didn't want to have a coughing fit on the video. All right, so let's take a look at the actual code. So again, I'm going to go to this demo here. I'm going to right click and choose Edit with Notepad++. And you're going to see that there's a page here. Now, I'm putting all of this inside of the style tag just so it's easier to talk about it and walk through the explanations. But a lot of this would probably belong in your CSS sheet if you're formatting your entire site. So just be aware, I'm putting it in a style tag for the ease of this video, but generally you want your formatting to be in the CSS sheet for your website. All right, so we'll start with the mouse or the cursor. So I'm formatting the body tag so that the mouse has that picture for the entire site. And then you're setting the cursor property, and then you have to do URL catmouse.jpg, kind of like when you're doing the background images. And then you're going to want this auto part here at the end. Now, what I will warn you is that the picture has to be really small for this to work. All right, if you use a large picture, it's not going to work. So if you go back to this file here, and I take a look at the properties, let's see, details. You're going to see that this picture is only like 32 pixels by 29 pixels. So it's really pretty small. Now, you can always get a bigger picture and size it down, but you're not just going to be able to use like a giant 1,000 pixel by 1,000 pixel picture. That will not work if you're going to try to change your mouse to some sort of image or something else like that. It has to be a pretty small picture, but once you've got it, that's all that it really requires is just the name of the file, and you're setting the cursor property of the body tag. All right. Next, we'll talk about the custom fonts. All right. So this is something that is actually somewhat useful and you might actually want to use in your site. So if you're going to have a custom font, first you need to get the file that actually defines that font. So if you look in this folder here, you're going to see there's this file, Rapskull. All right, this is the file that actually provides the information for the font that I'm having displayed on my site. Now, where can you find these? You can use, there's sites that on the internet that have free fonts. One is dafont.com, DAFONT.com, and it has all sorts of fonts that you can choose from. So like maybe I want to use this honey carrot font on my website. I can click on this. It'll show me what each and every letter and number and symbol and everything else looks like. So if I want to see what that looks like, it'll show me kind of the complete definition. And then I can also download the font right here. All right, so if I click on this, it's going to download a zip file. All right, the same types of files that we've been using for the files that I submit to you through Classroom. So again, this is in my downloads file. I can right click on this and extract all. All right, if I hit extract, that's going to create the folder, the unzipped version. All right, so I don't need the zipped version anymore. And then inside of that folder is going to be the font file that you actually need. So right here, this honey-carrot is the font file that I actually need. All right, this is the file you want to add to your website folder. All right, kind of like pictures, we're going to want this in the same folder as whatever we're working on. So if I wanted to use this font, I would have to go back here and add this to my folder so that it was part of whatever I was working on. All right, now once the folder's in there, what you're going to do is you're going to do @font_face. You're going to do font family, and then this part is up to you. This is the name that you're giving the font. All right, so I could have called it my first font. I could have called it Rapskull, just like it's named in the file. I could call it pretty much whatever I want. All right, this is the name that I'm choosing. All right, you shouldn't pick something like Arial or Times Roman that already exists, but you can pick basically your own name here. Once you have this entry in your style sheet, in your style tag, wherever, you can then use that font the same way you use any other font. So when I go down here to my H2 tag and I say font family, my first font is now something it will recognize because I've created this @font_face entry. All right, this basically makes it so that our browser will recognize this name, my first font, and it will apply this file that we want to be using. All right, so if you want to use a custom font for your site, great. You're going to set up this @font_face. You're going to need to get the file and actually put it in the folder, and then you give it a name. And once you've set this up, you can then use that name anywhere else in your site when you're setting the font family property to get the font that you want. All right, so that's what's allowing me to get this font right here. All right, and if I change this, where am I? Wrong place. All right, so I've got this honey carrot file. Let me just check the extension on that. It's .ttf. So if I go here and I say honey carrot .ttf, right, and I save this and I refresh my page, now it's got that honey carrot font as opposed to the Rapskull font. So it's just looking at the file that you've included there and then using that file to format the font however it needs to look on that page. Okay, so again, that's one that a lot of kids do end up using. So that can be pretty useful if you want your page to look a little more exciting than having everything be like boring regular font. It really kind of makes things pop if you get like a custom font to make your page a little more interesting. All right, next is the address or the kind of the title bar up top. So this is something that a lot of people also like to do. Now, notice this says h1.linkbar. It doesn't have to say link bar. The reason it says h1.linkbar is because down here, when I made my h1 tag, I specified the class as link bar. There's nothing special about that name. That's just the name that I gave it. If I had called it class Apple, then up here, it would have been h1.apple. So I just don't want you to think there's anything special about the word link bar there. It's just the name that I picked. So what I'm basically doing is I'm using the position fixed that we talked about before because that fixes it to the screen. And then I'm also setting the Z index, which ensures that it will end up on top of any other object. So the Z index is kind of where things fall vertically. So by setting it to 1, I'm ensuring that it's going to end up on top of all of that other stuff and not behind it. So that way it kind of stays there and travels with me as I scroll down the page. So again, something you could do if you wanted to have like a link bar or something like that on your page. All right, and it didn't have to be an H1 tag. That was just the tag that I was using for this one. So image.shrink. Now again, I'm just going to say this one more time and then hopefully you get the lesson. Shrink is not a special word. It's just the name that I picked. All right, so I decided to call it shrink because that's what the picture was doing. But this class name could have been anything. It didn't have to be shrink. That's just what I picked. All right. So what you'll notice here is there's some of the regular stuff that we're used to seeing. So there's positioning, there's pixels here. There's a width and a height and an opacity. And then there's this transition property, right? And the transition property is specifying how long it's going to take for the transition to happen. So the change that we're going to make to the width is going to take 2 seconds. The change that we're going to make to the height is going to take 4 seconds. The change that we're going to make to the opacity, which is like how see-through it is going to take 6 seconds. Now, down here, I have an image shrink : hover. So it's referring to that same picture. And in the hover property, I specify the new values for width, height, and opacity. So what this is saying is, as long as my mouse is still on top of the picture, the width is going to go from 400 down to 10, and it's going to take 2 seconds to do it. The height is going to go from 400 to 10, and it's going to take 4 seconds to do it. And the opacity is going to go from 1, which is like fully clear, to 0, and that's going to take 6 seconds. So if you notice, the width is going to go down a lot faster than the height, and then it's not going to disappear for like 2 seconds after the picture actually completely changes its size. So if you can kind of watch it there, it takes a little longer for it to disappear even after the size has stopped changing. And again, it kind of works in reverse there where the transition happens in reverse, where the width grows a lot quicker than some of the other things, right? So, all right, and then you can kind of see it come back there. The width comes back before the full height comes back. All right, so again, I don't really know that you'll have need for this one, but it's there. Next, let's talk about the running cat. So this is our little guy that goes back and forth here from side to side. So again, Chase is just the name that I gave it. I have position relative, height, width, whatever. And the position and relative is important because otherwise the left and the these commands won't work here because you always have to set the position for the lefts and the tops and the bottoms to work. But what we have here is an animation duration, so that's how long it's going to take. This is how many times the animation is going to work. So I'm having it happen an infinite number of times. This is the name that I'm giving the animation. So this kitty wasn't something that's not like part of the code. That's the name that I decided to give my animation. And then I have animation direction, which is alternate so that it's going to go back and forth and switch directions each time that it runs. Right? Now, this right here is the key, and that connects to this entry right here. So at keyframes kitty is kind of like what we did up here with the font where we had at font face. All right, this created a font that we could use. This down here is creating an animation that we can now use. And this animation is called kitty. Again, it didn't have to be called kitty. I could have called it running. And then right here, I would have used the word running instead of kitty. All right, so kitty has no relevance. It's just the name that I picked for it. So I called the animation running or kitty, and I'm saying it's basically change the positioning from left 0 pixels to left 500 pixels, right? So I'm basically changing the amount of space that's to the left of the picture, right? Now, to go from 0 to 500 pixels, it's going to take 3 seconds because that's what I specified. And it's going to keep going over and over and over again. And it's just going to happen in reverse so that, it goes back and forth. So that's what's happening right here. And if I go in and start changing some of those properties, so let's say I go in here and say I only give it a second for it to happen, what that's going to do is it's basically going to speed up my cat, right? And now it's going to go a lot faster because it only takes a minute a second for that to happen. If I change it to 10 seconds, all right, it's going to slow the cat way down because it's now going to take 10 seconds to complete the entire animation. All right. So again, that's, you can play with these things to try to get the effect that you want. But this is basically how I can have something slide back and forth. I create the animation, and then once I've created it, I can use it and apply it to like pictures or text or things like that. All right. So this right here is sort of the Slanty Cat. So this is just using this transform property. And then this is just the box around it to help give it that perspective. So this perspective property and this transform property, the combination of those is kind of what's giving us the effect that you're seeing here. So again, I don't know why you would need to use this. Maybe if you're trying to make like a Star Wars like text crawl where it kind of like goes up like that. It gives you that sort of look to it. So it's an option. It's there. You don't have to use it. And then last but not least is the Spinny Cat. So again, the Spinny Cat is just another animation. So instead of doing an animation where I'm changing how much space is to the left of something, I have an animation where I'm rotating. So this says, transform, do a rotation from 0 degrees to 360 degrees. And then I have these same properties that I had before. I'm specifying how long it takes. I'm specifying that I want it to keep happening. Again, this is the name I came up with, but it could have been something different. And then I'm just having it alternate so that it goes in one direction and then the other. And the same thing, I could play with this if I wanted it to spin really fast. I could change this to 1 second, and then I'd have a really fast spinning cat. All right. So again, I'm not sure any of this stuff is super useful. Maybe the fonts, maybe this title bar here. But I do just show this to kids so that if there's something they want to try, if there's something they want to add to their website, if they're like, hey, actually, I could do something cool with this, it's an option. I think one person actually made like a Jeopardy game on their site where if you hovered over it, the question would disappear and then the answer was underneath. So there are like clever ways you can use this sort of stuff. And sites do use this sort of stuff in clever, interesting ways. This is just kind of, this site's more just a joke more than anything else. But it's here. And then you can kind of use this code that I'm giving to you as a reference. So if you're like, oh, how do I do fonts? Come back to this site, look at it. Oh, how do I do a title bar? Come back to this site, look at it. Oh, how do I make a picture spin? Again, I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, but if you did, you could come back to this and look at it. So again, nothing here is required. There's no lab. There's nothing you have to do from here. It's just presented to you as an option in case it's something that you want to look into or add to your own site. All right. So again, I hope this was useful. Have a great day, and I will see you when I see you.